Welcome to the Echelon AI podcast, the show where we explore the future of professional services as they're transformed by AI and share practical strategies to help businesses and professionals thrive. I'm your host, David, founder of Echelon AI. At Echelon, we help professional service businesses scale using the latest technologies to seize a competitive advantage and leap ahead in this fast-paced world. Today, joining us is Steve Gibbs, attorney turned entrepreneur and co-founder of Insurance and Estate Strategies, a leading permanent life insurance and estate planning platform. With a background in trusts and estate law, Steve has successfully transitioned from traditional legal practice to building a content-driven, web-based platform that's positioned to become the top permanent life representative in the space. Steve and his team are now leveraging AI to create more personalized, educational experiences for their diverse client base. Steve, it's great to have you on the show today.
Thank you, David. Great to be here. Looking forward to it.
As am I. Steve, you made a fascinating transition from practicing trusts and estate law to building a web-based insurance and estate planning platform. What inspired that shift?
There's a few different aspects to it, I think, David, but really my background is very entrepreneurial. I had business people in my family, and I ended up, as an attorney, I ended up starting my own practice, which is also an entrepreneurial venture. So for me, I started to see the utility of these assets. So I call it, I know we'll talk more about the asset, but the insurance platform that I envisioned had a lot to do with permanent life insurance, cash value life insurance, and providing a space that would help to educate consumers on both the insurance aspects and also offer feedback on the estate planning and the trust planning that I was already doing. So I was really hoping to kind of marry those two arenas to an integrated space. And what's great is it seems like the market is following that idea, which is really helpful to what we're looking to accomplish.
All right, fantastic. Now, you started with one business, you started another, obviously with a vision for a platform that can provide value across many different areas. Now, most businesses struggle with client acquisition, let alone client acquisition for a second business at the same time. Of course, yours are complementary. They work together. Your client base was already established. But especially in financial services, there's a lot of competition. Now, we spoke the other day and you mentioned getting an early foothold through content marketing before it became competitive. What was that journey like in those early days?
Yeah, great question. Actually, most of my clients from the law practice didn't transition over, maybe surprising to a lot of people, but because of our licensing and all that stuff, I was somewhat compelled to keep it separate. So we really started this out kind of cold, and I was still operating the practice for many years after we founded Insurance and Estates. So you're correct. So we purposed to have the best content on the web, and I had a business partner who had also come from estate planning as an attorney, and he'd had a lot of experience with web-based content. So we started doing a lot of written content, started doing videos on different permanent life insurance topics, and it was sort of low-hanging fruit. 9 years ago, now it was easier to put well-optimized articles out there and have them discovered pretty readily from the search engines, Google primarily. So that helped us a lot. We were able to get positioned in the market, help a lot of people with information that they weren't always receiving at that time. They're getting more now with the marketplace, having a lot of content. So that's changed quite a bit, but that was a way that we could get started.
Yeah, now you got an early foothold, as mentioned, right? And it sounds like it started with written content, maybe a little easier to get noticed on Google 10 or so years ago. But surely it wasn't always easy for you. I mean, things have evolved. The social aspect, whether it's social media, whether it's blogs, it's become extremely competitive, right? Did it ever start getting a little bit more challenging for you to get traction with your articles, with your content, to get noticed? What was that journey like?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, the first several years, maybe 5-6 years, were pretty much building and gaining traction with the content that we were putting out there. I think a couple of years ago, things started to shift to the negative with the search engines, and primarily, again, Google being the Goliath in that arena. So we definitely saw a different environment shape up a couple of years ago with a lot more emphasis on the bigger companies, frankly, in the marketplace. They were able to sort of edge out some of the smaller companies, so we had to kind of pivot with that reality. There was a lot of money that was being thrown around to position, for big companies to position themselves on the web. And early on, it was a little bit more of a scrappy environment for whoever wanted to get involved. So that did change, and we had to adapt to the standards for bigger companies. We had to change our approach somewhat. We still kept putting out content, but we had to do more with videos. Obviously, everybody pivoted to more videos, I think, a couple of years ago. And so those kinds of moves, and also raising the quality on what we were doing in terms of practices. Not so much the quality of the articles, but practices. There were a lot of requirements that shifted a few years ago with that also.
Now, I think when most people think of estate planning and life insurance, most people get the impression that these guys are probably working with some old fogies or some people close to retirement, people who are considering passing on their estate and such. What kind of clients do you find that you attract the most? I mean, if we're talking about social media content and providing education, surely you can reach a lot more people than that.
And it's a really large cross section of the population, so people do rightly assume that we're working with a fair number of older people. That there's some marketing advice out there that's basically don't ignore the baby boomers still, because they're still doing a lot. They're still funding different things. They still want to travel. They still want to protect their, take care of their families. So we definitely don't shun the baby boomers. There's a huge wealth transfer, as I'm sure you've heard, and most people have. So, and that's a part of work helping the baby boomers. But we're also seeing millennials now, the next generations. My generation's sort of the one that kind of gets lost. It's the Gen Xers, but Gen Xers are now, really almost in retirement or in that arena. But you have the millennials that are having kids, and that's a pretty popular area for trust and estate planning. So, and not to mention, they're on the receiving end of a lot of the wealth transfer that's going on. So we definitely see a need to market to the millennials, and then the younger generations, they may be getting married. That's still kind of touch and go. We see some real successful younger, Gen Zers or whatever. Once in a while, I want to do some early planning. But mostly, I think you're dealing with those large swaths of the population with the millennials and the baby boomers.
So we're looking at an age range of maybe around 30 years old until probably pretty close to 70, right? So about a 40-year age range. Now, if we're looking at the market, that's huge, especially for marketing specifically. I mean, we're looking at social media, written content, but also video-generated content as well. You're into, social media on its own is an industry of itself. Then you're also in estate planning and insurance, right? You're basically navigating two very competitive industries with a pretty wide range of clients. How is it that you attract the right clientele or stand out in the market from everyone else?
We're in an industry that we see a lot with the transactional stuff. So we see people wanting to get term insurance, for example. We might see people that want to get trusts and they want it as cheaply as possible. So we're surfing on a different wave to a certain degree. We're looking to help people that are interested in the unique aspects of permanent insurance, for example, and having they're oftentimes they're not talked about in mainstream. So that was one of the things, by the way, that drew me into the industry, was just being able to talk about these advantages. And you have things like, contractual guaranteed tax-free growth, being able to leverage your cash account from your life insurance, which is a very well-known thing that pretty much a good portion of the population has either forgotten about or never been told about. So what we're doing is we're appealing to these groups. Now, if you have a baby boomer that's older, we've had people that inquire about policies and they're 65, 70. Now they may be putting some kind of lump sum in, and it's a different deal than somebody your age that wants a policy, that wants to see it grow over decades. So you're talking a different conversation there. But the way that we go about it is more strategically targeting the goals. So for example, we talk a lot about tax-free retirement. So for somebody like yourself, I might say, hey, David, do you want to have a bucket of your retirement that's tax-free? I would ask you questions like, where's everything right now in terms of your assets? You have different buckets. Are they in the tax-deferred or the tax-free buckets? People are going to say the majority of my assets are in the tax-deferred, or just, maybe there's some assets like stocks and things like that that aren't that actually you would think they're not tax deferred, but they're still you haven't paid the taxes on that growth yet. So we're trying to appeal to that goal mindset across the board, from the younger to the older. And so you might be talking tax-free retirement, you might be talking other things, just protection kind of strategies. And so you might be talking about things that only older people are interested in, but then again, if somebody has young kids like yourself, actually I don't know if you have young kids, but somebody your age has young kids, then we're having a different conversation at that point.
So it sounds like, although it's a pretty wide range of people that you help, I mean, it's coming down to the same thing, right? People are thinking about retirement. They're thinking about their future, whether they're closer to the retirement or further. Maybe there's a little bit more pain for people closer to the retirement, or more need that you can help with, right? So although there might be quite a difference or range in people, I mean, it sounds like you're really just fundamentally boiling it down to a couple of needs or desires that you're helping with.
Right. I encourage younger people regularly because you have a lot of time to be able to watch that progress, watch things mature. For somebody older, they may have more assets, so they may have more ability to just dump some funds into a certain thing, which lends itself to some different products and different strategies. But for somebody younger, you're talking about a long-term strategy that you can fit into an overall plan. So you have different ways that you can discuss that, depending on where you're at in life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're thinking about targeted marketing at this point that is tailored towards specific goals. Not so much this is our avatar, or whatever you want to say. And a lot of people think avatars don't even work, but we're not really doing that. We're just looking at goals. And then of course, then you have a target for that specific goal. So if it's tax-free retirement, that's a broad swath. But if you have somebody that is retiring and they want guaranteed income, then that's a more specific age group we're going to talk to about that.
Right. So, I mean, fundamentally, you're helping people solve the same problems, but it's in different ways, right? And for different reasons, let's say. And as I understand it, I mean, you've really been able to attract people mostly through the content that you put out, right? You have a huge inbound volume of leads coming to you.
Yes, I mean, we've got a really well-positioned website with insuranceandestates.com. People can check it out. And like I said, we are kind of unique because we're not just talking life insurance. We're talking about strategic life insurance. So we're fortunate to have that. And there's a fair amount of traffic that we get just from organic content from that.
Yeah.
And that's people searching for articles that rank well. And again, that's been a journey, but we're thankful to have that presence. And videos complement that. We have our YouTube channel is pretty steady. A lot of the YouTube channels in our industry aren't huge, but we've got a pretty steady following there on YouTube, and just continue to prioritize education and push that educational content, which is what people are looking for.
Oh, absolutely. And I think all business owners now, they know they should be making social media content, and they understand, or at least most of them know, that a lot of it needs to be video heavy and informative, right? Just the engagement levels in people are quite a bit lower. Not too many people have the time or the attention span specifically to read an article, no matter how good it is. For yourself, where have you been seeing some of the biggest shifts or changes in how people consume financial education?
It's a terrific question. I think it's attention span. It seems like in the last, I'll go with a full 8 years, that the attention span seems like it's dropped 75% of what it was. So we have long articles. We have a lot of information in them. I suspect the majority of the people that are there want the information. They're probably going to skim the article. So we've had to kind of adjust the presentation of a lot of our articles so that they're easy to to follow and easy for people to grab bits of information out of there. And then if they want more on that specific topic, obviously they can find that. But I feel like it's more the attention, you have to grab it. I think we've had to change how we write over the years to make it even more simple and helping people to kind of enter in with simple concepts, and then they can get more information on that if they want it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Attention span is everything and being able to capture it. Now, I won't ask you for much of your secret sauce, but I will ask you, what can you share? Because, a lot of people are out there doing gimmicks online or trying to think they have to do silly dances and all these different things when it comes to grabbing attention with social media content. What's the approach that you take that, if you could share it, that's been the most effective for you?
Well, yeah, I think I can definitely share that our values, and this comes from my personal side, it comes from all the way back when I started in business as a trust attorney. I got into it so that I could educate people. I enjoyed that aspect of it. And as an attorney, I did a lot of that. So just training people about trust, which is really where the practice was at that time. That was about 15 years ago. And we did actually seminars. So, and people are still, once in a while, they're doing that. It still works with the baby boomers. There's still people doing live seminars on trust planning. So, but the reason I mention that is just because it goes back. And so we've always had a value, and even the partners that we work with, the marketing people, what I see in the industry is that the top people are actually focused on educating, not arm twisting a product or, pushing into a certain area, but offering training around something like tax-free retirement, where people don't know that this option exists, and just giving that. And then the sales side comes off of that, because if somebody wants to learn more, then you can have that conversation. Well, I really think, especially, there are gimmicks for sure. There's a lot of crazy stuff in our industry that the companies and the regulatory people and everything, scramble over. And so we try to avoid that by just presenting an educational approach, not endorsing a product in any education. You talk general concepts and offer that understanding, and then they can go from there if they want more information.
I love that. Leading with authenticity and value. I mean, if you can put yourself in a position where you're offering your ideal audience or your avatar so much value that they need, that they're asking, man, what can I pay this guy for? Like, what can I pay these people for if they're giving this away for free? It's an incredible position to be in, right? It's a great way to get attention. People have problems. They want them solved. They're looking for others, businesses, to solve those problems for them. So by giving value, by educating and providing people with the advice, well, a little bit of it, and information they need up front, it's a great way to really draw people in. Now, so you have an incredible inbound pipeline that you've built based off of the education that you share, the knowledge we put out there. I'm sure the referrals that come as a result as well. But not long ago, you mentioned some targeted outbound as well. What's the decision behind that? Is it part of your scaling? Are you finding the inbound slowing down with the competition in the market? What's the plan there?
It's an interesting one. We have team members that are probably more capable than I am of answering that. But my belief is that the inbound or the outbound feeds the inbound to a large degree. In other words, you have to engage. So what I'm being told and understanding in the marketplace today, for example, we do regular blasts to our entire list. We also advertise targetedly. I think that's a word.
It is now.
For our agents and for specific campaigns, and that feeds our list building, and it also is a way of pushing people continually to our site. So I think for somebody starting out, I feel like you'd have to come up with amazing content, and you would have to push. You'd have to be doing 100% outbound, obviously, until you had some clout, and then you can start to utilize that traffic that's coming. And that kind of goes to our whole history too. We needed to in the early on years that we were, if you consider putting out content as sort of an outbound strategy, we were 100% outbound. We were just posting it right on Google or whatever. So we do both to keep that engagement going. We have to. I think everybody does.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. You got to get your name out there, right? And you can get a certain amount of awareness, at the top of that funnel with referrals and with some content, but by paying into it a little bit as well, I mean, you're literally paying to put your name in front of people. So if you have the content presence to back that up when they visit your website, I mean, you're just directing people to exactly what you want them to see anyways, even if you're not asking them for their money.
Right, which is a lot of it. That's the advantage of having a nicely positioned site. And again, I would speak to anybody on that. It's just that if your site's a great resource, then you can always be doing the campaigns and reaching out and pushing people back to it, and they get some value out of that.
Absolutely. So Steve, I mean, you started as a lawyer, you made a shift, right? You saw an area of opportunity to serve your clients more in better ways. It wasn't easy at first, but you found a great foothold with content, drawing people in by providing them with value. But the landscape changed. You kept up with it, right? You started making new types of content, putting out more information, more education. You're bolstering that by doing a little bit of outbound to keep what it is you're doing alive and, thriving.
Right.
Now, through all of this, you've been able to keep up with the changing times, right? Whether it be how people need to be marketed to with content or, of course, keeping up with technology, right? The latest technology, AI. We spoke the other day. You mentioned your team's starting to work on using AI to create more personalized educational experiences to enhance what it is that you're doing. Can you walk us through what that looks like?
Sure. AI has invaded I think everywhere, right? We're seeing it just exploding in every industry. Certainly invaded the life insurance and planning areas. And so we're recognizing that AI, and there's probably many ways that we're using AI at this point. And so I'll try to highlight that. We're recognizing that AI offers the ability to take what we've already been doing and make it just completely streamline it. If it were a if it were a Model T before that, it could be a Ferrari probably. And by that I mean this, the user experience, right? So what we're understanding, and I'm sure others in the industry do, I don't think this is revealing anything that's a secret, is that somebody comes to a site for whatever it is. It could be insurance, permanent insurance, trust planning, it could be term life, whatever it is. I believe that AI is creating a ability to have a conversation with the person immediately. So there's not a lag time on that. And it's not just a chat, right? It's not just, how can I help you today or something. I mean, and it's a little bit of that. We're seeing at this point in development is just that it can be more personal than that. So it can be integrated with content that we already have on the website. So you have the conversation, they get to share some things, then maybe we're able to then, through the AI technology, streamline that process for them where they're getting some things put in front of them. And the ultimate goal for that is to do the same thing that we've already done in the past. And we didn't touch on this too much, David, but what we've tried to do with leads is educate them prior to them getting to the agent. So, because it's key to the kind of things that we do. It's probably key to many different industries, but especially with us, because we're dealing with something that needs a little background. They need to understand what the strategy is that they're interested in, and they can learn more about it before they talk to an expert, right? One of our experts. So we're trying to educate them through webinars, through videos, through articles, whichever way is attractive to them. We're trying to do that. So AI seems to be offering an ability for them to have the initial conversation immediately and to start tailoring that information more effectively toward what they're looking for.
And so an enhanced user experience to provide people with access to what it is they're looking for at an expedited rate at any time of day.
Right. And we're all seeing it, right? We're seeing that we're using AI search engines now for our own. Why are we doing that? I can search Google or Safari or whatever, or I can search, Grok or Claude or whatever. So, and what are we getting? I feel like the experience is better at this point with AI than it is. And it's also easier to build on. So right? So you get some initial feedback, and then it'll ask you more questions, and that's really a model, I think, for what we're going to see with life insurance platforms. I'm sure not just ours. It'd be nice if just ours offered that, but I'm sure we'll see it in the industry as a whole and have that ability for people to get what they're really looking for in real time and in a more efficient way than they're getting right now.
Absolutely. It's an incredible opportunity that's coming all of there are incredible opportunities coming our way. Steve, with all these things considered now, when we're looking at AI specifically and how much value it's going to bring to your business and to your clients as well, are there any specific problems or challenges that you're hoping AI will solve in terms of client interaction and maybe even lead qualification?
That's really, yes. There's always we notice a team member, an agent who's experienced. All of our people are really experienced. So we don't have new people that are just figuring out the industry. So typically if they have a lead, they want that person a little bit invested, a little bit on board with some knowledge. They don't necessarily want to go cold. And so the challenge is always, how do you take that cold lead and warm them up to the degree that they're really educated, they're really interested. And of course, any agent would almost want them ready to sign up. I mean, well, they would want that actually. They would want that client ready to roll. And so I think that the challenge has been how to do that effectively, how to get them down the road a ways before they go to the agent. And we get feedback from our agents on that. We've had some help from some of our agents in terms of helping that along. A lot of it started out manual. It was basically, you're interested, we'll watch this webinar first, and then we can set up a meeting. So hopefully we'll be able to overcome that gap where it's all seamless. They're already getting to know us through the AI, ideally, and then they're getting educated at the same time. And maybe there's a way that they can even get to know the agent. So in other words, and I think there will be a way for that because of the content that they'll be able to be sent, and maybe even an introduction of some kind. So yeah, so we're all.
Well, heck, there's even some cool things you can do with cloning your agents' voices and such. And even if you want to have personalized messages sent to them, it won't be the same. They won't necessarily get to know the agent. But hey, when they're on the phone, they'll be like, hey, there's that familiarity there anyways. So, Steve, I mean, maybe we won't say you're an early adopter, right? You're definitely getting in early with AI, earlier than a lot of people, right? And you're an entrepreneur. Your business is growing. I don't think you have any plans at stopping, right? You're using AI after all. You're not being stagnant and waiting for things to pass. What's next? Where do you want to take business over the next 6 to 12 months, especially as you're starting to integrate more AI?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you're an AI person too, I know, David. So you're giving me ideas as we're talking a little bit here, having the agent's voice. So that was a good one. I think that where we want to go is, if anything, expand our influence in the marketplace through it, broadening out the strategies that we're offering to the mainstream to where, and also just expanding our footprint. If we offer a trust planning capability with our people, and I know that that's been an interest for probably 10 years in the marketplace, starting with LegalZoom and going to some of these others. So I think expanding our reach into that broad marketplace that has been a more competitive market than some of the other things that we've done. And there's other arenas too that we just want to keep expanding our footprint and our impact in that competitive space using AI. I think if we can use AI, then I think that experience will feed those additional, and we'll also be able to identify the interest of people more effectively and then route them toward those areas where it might get lost right now without the AI capability.
Maybe not necessarily doing anything wildly different than you're doing right now. Business, in essence, it will still look the same, just things are able to happen faster and in a more curated way.
Right. I think we're not looking to get in any other industries at this point. We're just simply looking to build on success and expand that, But we've also, I think that if anything, that we're just wanting to pivot towards some more mainstream areas of interest for the population. In other words, if someone's not interested in permanent cash value life insurance, if they're just interested in term and want to trust that we'll have that we'll be more present in the market than we are now in order to accomplish that.
Now, Steve, I think for a lot of business owners, especially the ones who might be a little bit more reserved or hesitant to start using AI, some of the concerns that arise are, oh, wow, this is different, this is new. So it must mean things are going to look different for my business, right? Our relationships will change. How it is we do business will change. Everything will be different. Maybe they feel like they'd have to be a beginner again within their own industry that they've become an expert in, right? But it sounds like that's not the view or belief that you have yourself. I mean, just around AI in general, what sort of advice would you give to other professionals or business owners or entrepreneurs who are hesitant about adopting new technologies such as AI in within their business?
Well, it might not be the most comforting. I think they have to, because I think that you're going to be obsolete. You're going to be sitting there with a website. It's just people have to navigate themselves. And I think when this resource is available far and wide, it could be another level of ADD that people are wrestling with, right? If other sites have all this integration and stuff and help, and then if they run into a traditional site, I feel like that could be a bad place to be. So if we're talking about a platform, if we're talking about a web-based business, I think it's especially critical. I think if you have an old school person that has a lot of relationships and gets a lot of referrals, maybe not so much, except the fact that those people may want the resource. So they may want to be able to go on that person's website and look up stuff, and you don't really want them going somewhere else. So just to stay competitive, I feel like you gotta acknowledge AI. I've been around for a few years, but I feel like it's here, right? We all know that.
Couldn't agree more. Steve, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing these insights with the audience. For any listeners who might like to connect with you, what would be the best way to reach out?
People that are watching can email me, just Steve and then our domain insurance and estates.com. I don't know if you have a link or anything there, David, but
we'll add that link in for you.
Okay. And then if people want to just check out the site, they can go to the domain as well. But if people if they want to know more about getting help with anything, then they can email me and I can always route. Even though I'm not AI, I can route them to the right person within the company as well. And it'll be great to hear from people if people have a question.
Fantastic. Steve, thank you so much for your time on the show today.
David, I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
To the listeners, thank you for tuning into the Echelon AI podcast. As always, I hope this episode has brought you valuable insight, knowledge, and inspiration. If it did, please would you show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Until next time, we're signing off.